He was the man who built an empire without ever letting a woman touch his heart, until one night shattered everything he believed in. What began as a mistake became an obsession, and what looked like a sin turned out to be fate's greatest miracle. Watch till the end, and don't forget to subscribe for more heart-touching stories like this. Alexander Reed was a name that carried both fear and fascination across the corporate world. The youngest self-made CEO in the country, known for his ruthless discipline, icy calm, and an almost unnatural distance from women. The media called him the untouchable king, not just because of his perfection, but because, despite his fame and power, he never once allowed himself to be seen with a woman outside a business meeting. Rumors spread that he hated women. Others said he was heartbroken once and never recovered. The truth was simpler but darker. He had watched his mother destroyed by his father's betrayal, and from that day, he built walls so high that even love could not climb them. His life was a precise routine: work, workout, silence, sleep, until one stormy night changed it forever. It happened after a charity gala hosted at one of his hotels. Alexander never drank, never stayed long at events, but that evening, something in him felt oddly restless. Maybe it was the way the rain fell outside, or maybe it was fate whispering that his life was about to be rewritten. In another part of the same hotel, a young woman named Lily Hart was helping backstage. She wasn't a guest, but a staff member, a hard-working girl from a small town working nights to pay for her younger brother's hospital bills. She was kind, quiet, and carried sadness in her eyes, yet everyone who met her felt warmth. But that night, she became the target of a cruel scheme. The investor's spoiled son had been after her for months, and when she rejected him again, he slipped a drug into her drink at the staff table, planning to take advantage of her later. But fate intervened. As Alexander left the gala early, someone bumped into him, spilling wine on his jacket. The staff scrambled, and in the confusion, Lily, dizzy and barely conscious, was accidentally guided to Alexander's private suite instead of the staff quarters by a confused attendant who mistook her for his guest. When Alexander entered his room moments later, he was shocked to find a girl collapsed on the floor, breathing weakly, her eyes half open, whispering for help. His first instinct was to call security, but one look at her pale face stopped him cold. There was innocence in her even in that state, something fragile that disarmed his usual control. He called the doctor, stayed by her side all night, cooling her forehead with wet towels, his heart pounding with a feeling he couldn't explain. When she finally opened her eyes at dawn, terrified and confused, he reassured her gently that nothing had happened, that she was safe. But something had happened, not to their bodies, but to their souls. For the first time in 13 years, Alexander's heart had skipped a beat for someone. He tried to brush it off, telling himself it was pity, but he found himself thinking about her, searching her name from the staff list, and checking the security cameras just to make sure she was okay. He told himself to stop. CEOs don't fall for staff members, especially ones they barely knew, but he couldn't. He started noticing her everywhere, how she smiled at others, how she worked late into the night, how she never asked for help even when her hands trembled from exhaustion. Days turned into weeks, and his obsession deepened. He began visiting the hotel more often, finding excuses to inspect the departments she worked in. He offered her brother's hospital help anonymously, but she refused charity. What she didn't know was that Alexander was the anonymous donor who kept paying the bills anyway. Yet the more he helped, the more distance she kept, afraid of the rumors that would destroy her job. The story turned darker when the same investor's son who drugged her returned, furious that she had escaped. He threatened to ruin her career, and when she still refused him, he tried to frame her for theft. The scandal exploded, security footage was manipulated, and Lily was fired overnight. She left in tears, carrying her last paycheck and the humiliation of a crime she didn't commit. Alexander, away on a business trip, returned 2 days later to find her gone. When he learned what had happened, something inside him snapped. For the first time, the world saw the CEO lose control. Within 24 hours, he exposed the investor's son, released the original footage, and fired every manager involved. But Lily had already disappeared. For months, he searched, hiring detectives, scouring towns, even visiting the hospital where her brother had been treated, only to learn she'd left the city after her brother's death. The man who never believed in love, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, haunted by the memory of her soft voice and frightened eyes. A year passed, and one rainy evening, while driving through an underprivileged district, he saw a familiar figure selling flowers by the roadside. It was her, thinner, paler, but unmistakably Lily. He stopped his car, his heart hammering, and approached her slowly as if afraid she might vanish if he blinked. She froze, recognizing him, shame and gratitude flashing in her eyes. "Why are you here?" he asked softly. "Because it's the only place I belong now," she replied, tears trembling on her lashes. Without another word, he took off his coat and wrapped it around her, whispering, "No, from now on, you belong where I am." He brought her back, gave her a new job at his personal foundation, not a staff, but as an assistant, refusing to let her out of his sight. Yet their bond was not easy. She was grateful but distant, believing their worlds were too far apart. He tried everything: kindness, patience, silence, until one night, while she was working late, she broke down, confessing she couldn't bear the pain of losing her brother and being treated as nothing. Alexander simply held her hand and said, "You were never nothing. You were the only one who made me feel human again." That night, they sat in silence, hearts speaking what words couldn't. But just when it seemed life would finally grant them peace, a twist came. The same corrupt investor returned, seeking revenge, framing Alexander himself for embezzlement. The media tore him apart, calling it karma. Lily, now stronger than before, refused to let him fall. She secretly gathered evidence, faced the same people who once ruined her, and presented proof that cleared his name before the entire board. For the first time, the world saw the untouchable king stand beside a simple girl, holding her hand before reporters, saying, "She is my truth." Their love became the story that melted the coldest hearts. Years later, on the anniversary of the night they first met, Alexander confessed the secret he had hidden all along, that he knew she was the one who healed him the moment he saw her in pain, that fate had not made a mistake that night, but had chosen the only path that could bring them together. Tears streamed down Lily's face as she whispered, "So it was never a mistake?" And he smiled, replying, "No, it was destiny pretending to be one." From then on, the man who never touched women touched one heart forever. And the girl who thought she was broken became the reason an empire learned to love. Their story spread like wildfire, not as gossip, but as proof that even the coldest souls can find warmth in the most unexpected storm. And if you ever wonder how fate works, remember, sometimes one mistake is just love wearing a disguise.